Hey everybody, welcome to Warhammer Stuff. Today we have Imperial Knights House Volker versus the Gene Stealer Cult's Twisted Helix. So let's go ahead and take a look at the armies.
Alright, so for today I'm bringing 2,000 points on the dot of Twisted Helix. The reason why I'm bringing Twisted Helix is it's the cult creed that I've played before, and also having transhuman for my entire army against knights would be very useful, and well, it's what I'm familiar with. I'd never really got well with the other cults. So for starting off, we have a Patriarch. And, here's the Patriarch's clause. He has a Psychic Familiar. He has Preternatural Speed, so he'll be hitting first and he'll reroll to hit. And he has Smite, Psionic Blast, Mental Onslaught, basically offensive spells. Now there's one thing on here. So I made this list like a while ago, but I thought about it, so I replaced his Amulet of the Void. It says it there, but it's not the one I'm actually using. I'm using the Twisted Helix special item called, the Elixir of Prime Specimen, which basically gives him 2 of the genomic enhancements of my choice. So I gave him 5 up, Feel No Pain, and Exploding 6s, because I feel that that will be best. And also to note that Twisted Helix gives my entire army transhuman on a 1 and 2, and also they have +1 strength and +1 movement army-wide, including the vehicles, so figure that. Then I have a Magus with a familiar, and she has Might from Beyond, Psychic Stimulus, so she's a support. And then we have a Nexos, part of the No Force Organizations chart. So he has the Cranial Inlay Relic, because I want to be able to reclaim my CP on a 5-up, and that's pretty much all he does. Then the Biophagus is here just to give specialized buffs to the army. He's actually utterly useless to me. It's more like I have his presence, which gives me special abilities, the Genomic Enhancements and Alchemist Supreme abilities. So after he's in the game, he's pretty much useless to me. Now on to troops. So I have a giant unit of neophytes, all with shotguns. The leader has a shotgun, and they have 4 flamers and 4 seismic cannons, and this is the unit that has the genomic enhancement. These guys have a 5-up Feel No Pain from the Alchemist Supreme, so that's going to be very useful. And they have Lying in Wait, which means they can deep strike within 3 inches on the turn they come in. Then I have 3 units of neophytes. These all have shotguns. They have 2 flamers and 2 seismic cannons each. Then I have 1 big unit of Acolyte Hybrids, all with flamers, and they have from every angle, which means they can deep strike on the first turn. Then I have 3 Goliath trucks. They're all exactly the same, and they have the explosives in the 5 points for an extra explosive. Catch of demolition charges. They each have this, and they will be the transports for the 3 units of neophytes to get them around, because these are incredibly necessary. I find that the survival rate of neophytes is drastically increased when they have a 3-up armor save. And so, on to elites. Now, I took a battalion, so I can have more than 3 of each kind. So a Pure Strain Gene Stealer, Pure Strain Gene Stealers, and another unit of Pure Strain Gene Stealers. And these Pure Strain Gene Stealers they came from below, which allows them a very unique stuff. So when they're set up on the battlefield in their first turn, if I go first, they get a free 9-inch move before they're deployed as per Gene Stealer Cult's rules. But if I go second, I can put them into reserves and they can deep strike. Then I have a unit of Aberrants, which have a Trap is Sprung, which means the first turn they charge, they get an extra d6, and they remove 1. An extra dice, and I get to remove 1. So increases their chances of getting in. And then finally for heavy support, I have 2 Goliath Rock Grinders. One has a seismic or a clearance incinerator, and the other one has a seismic cannon. I didn't take the lasers because it's a D3 shots and I'm unlucky, so I went with what is consistent. And the clearance incinerator, I did my best to not counterplay my opponent, so I mean this is strong, but I mean it could be useful. We'll see. And so that is exactly 2,000 points of the Twisted Helix cult.
Alright, you guys, so for my 2,000 points, I'm playing House Volker. So this is Questor Mechanicus. So last time I played Questor Imperial. And so this is the Mechanicus committed houses. And they are more of a shooty kind of army. I wanted to go for a more shooty list. And this week, I actually updated my battle scribe, which apparently you need to do. Which is why last time you saw the Imperial Knights, they had 12-inch movement, and like there was like all kinds of stuff was off. It's because I didn't have the book quite so well learned, and so I was relying on the battle scribe information, which was from the old book. So if you watch the last one and you're like, this is very confusing for me, that is why. I was also confused. So, moving into the actual 9th edition Imperial Knights, here we go, House Volker. Up front, I have one squad of the 3 Armiger Warglaives. They're basically what you see is what you get. They all have the melta guns and the thermal spear and this chain cleaver, except for this guy over here. I swapped out his melta gun for the heavy stubber because I needed those points exactly, because this is exactly 2,000 points of an army. So he doesn't have a melta gun, and I'll make sure to distinguish him as we go, so that way everyone's aware who has it and who doesn't. Behind him is a Knight's Preceptor, which is basically the Imperial Knight Chaplain, so that's kind of cool. Let me just try and find his target box here. So I took away his chainsword and I gave him the Thunderstrike Gauntlet. I thought it would give him a little bit more damage potential. It technically gives him a few less attacks, but that's okay. And he has 3, I mean all Knight Preceptors do, but he gets 3 of the oaths, the things. Anyway, they all affect Armigers, but anyway, so he has Warrior's Hope, Wisdom of Nobility, and the Virtue of Courage. So Warrior's Hope, I select an Armiger class model within 12 inches. And that Armiger gains all the relevant chivalric abilities for my army's level of honor. So, no, it's active from Armiger class model and gains all the relevant. Does not. Yeah, okay. Wisdom of Nobility. Another Armiger within 12 inches. Each time that Armiger class model is selected for a bondsman ability, you can select one other Armiger class model that is within 6 inches of that Armiger, and both models get the bondsman ability, which is pretty cool. And then Virtue of Courage with it, which is while an Armiger class model is within 6 inches of this mentor, each time that model makes an attack, an unmodified hit roll of 6 is an additional hit scored. So that'll be pretty cool. He also has a relic. Battle Scribe was kind of being a butt about how to work in the warlord traits and the relics on my warlord, and it wouldn't show any relics for anyone else, so it's in there but it's not shown here. But he has the House of Volker relic, which is the Auric Mask, and that does this. While an enemy is within 12 inches of the bear, subtract 1 from the leadership characteristic of models in that unit. While an enemy unit is within 6 inches of the bear, subtract an additional 1 from the leadership characteristic of models in that unit, for a total modifier of -2 leadership. Kind of a big deal. And each time a combat attrition test is taken for that unit, subtract 1 from that combat attrition test. So basically, he's scary. And that's it. Yeah, so that's his relic. We're going to move on to the Knight Crusader on the corner here. Now this is just a plain Knight Crusader. He has the Iron Storm missile pod, and he has the Avenger Gatling cannon. He has a thermal cannon, so he's kind of a ranged meanie. And his bondsman ability is basically increases an Armiger class model's ballistic skill by 1. So that's kind of cool. But he's got just a bunch of big nasty shooting. So a thermal cannon is 2d3, strength 9 shots, -4d6 plus 2 damage. The Avenger Gatling cannon is a heavy 12, strength 6, so big guns. And then my warlord, now I did some reading, and apparently Knight Castellans and the other Dominus class, I think it's the Knight Paladin, are not super popular. But I wanted to try the Castellan because he is, as far as Imperial Knights goes, the big shooty. And he is my warlord. So let me go to his interesting stuff. So his warlord trait is blessed by the Sacrosanct. So an unmodified wound roll of 6 on ranged attacks inflicts 1 mortal wound in addition to the normal damage, up to 6 mortal wounds per phase. So there's a cap on it. He also has a relic, which is Call's Wrath. So his Plasma Decimator has been replaced with this relic. So it's a heavy 2d6, strength 8, -4, strength or damage 3, blast weapon. He also has 2 shield breaker missiles, so I swapped those out for 2 twin siege breaker cannons. But the shield breaker missiles ignore invuln saves, in case anyone's wondering. They're a single use item. He's got 2 of them. They're strength 10, d6 damage, -4, so they're mean. The siege breaker cannons, there's 2 of them, so they're heavy 2d3, strength 7, -1 AP and 2 damage, so AP is not great, but whatever. He's got a twin melta-gun and a volcano lance, which is heavy d3, strength 16, -5 d6 +8. So this is the big meanie of shooting in the Knights book, and I wanted to give him a go. He is my warlord, and we will see how this game goes for Knights.
Alright, so for the mission today, we got mission 1-2, which is tear down their icons. So it's control 1, control 2, control more, but it has a very interesting rule set for the secondary of setting primed explosives. Now, we have to get into our opponent's territory and prime the explosives, and we can do that literally anywhere. It has nothing to do with the objectives. The table's cut in half, right down the middle, up and down, and all we have to do is get into our wholly within the territory with an OBSEC unit to complete at the end of the turn. We do the objective, and yeah, and then it gets done. And all we have to do is we have to keep doing this every single turn. We can only do it once per turn. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. We only have to stay 9 inches away from the previous ones we planted, so that's pretty interesting. So go into our opponent's area, plant an explosive, and defuse any that get into ours. So that's kind of interesting because it's a secondary thing away from the main objectives. So that'll be interesting to play.
Alright, you guys, so for terrain, being a shooty Knights army, so last time I kind of got blocked in by a lot of terrain, even though it was a combat whatever, that was kind of okay, I think. But this time being more of a shooty one, I kind of want a lot of just kind of lines of sight open. And so I just kind of placed more open kind of terrain pieces that are more like difficult ground to slow things down and whatever. So that's kind of what I was aiming for this time. And so that's why I placed just kind of grates and these smoldering oil slicks. Even though they don't really look like that. That is what they are. So yeah, so that was kind of my plan.
My plan was I need cover to not get blown off the map, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I just gotta make sure I'm not obliterated as soon as it begins, so we'll see how that goes. Alright, so for secondaries, for Genestealer Cultiment with Brood Swarm, this is an absolute obvious one. All I have to do is have more models than my opponent on the battlefield, in my deployment zone, in their deployment zone, in the no man's land, and so I can gain up to 5 yeah, I saw this.
What secondary is that?
So you have 6 models, and so I get 1
That's a challenge.
if I have so how it works is there's my deployment zone, there's the battlefield, there's the no man's land, and then there's my opponent's. So if I have all 4 of those, I get a point each, and if I have all 4 of those, I get an extra point. So this is between 3 to 5 points a turn minimum. So I'm fairly confident that I can do this. Then I have Bring It Down, which is natural for countering his army. I mean, yeah, that's, oh my god. Yeah. And unfortunately, once again, getting a 3rd secondary is always a huge issue. And because, well, Raise the Banner is high could be a big problem for me with the way things go. But the way it is now written, essentially, I could probably get like 4 points off my home, and maybe off of 2 more I could probably get up to 10 easily with Raise the Banners high, the way the new rules work for Raise the Banners, so I'm going to go with that.
Alright. Yeah, well, so I also chose one from my book, although I guess technically it's from Warzone Nephilim now. But anyway, I chose Honor of the House, which basically, so Imperial Knights get chivalric codes. And so if I am honored, I get 2 victory points each round. wait, no. If you have more honored points than you had at the start of the battle round, score 2 victory points. And then I gain 2 additional victory points if I'm honored, or 3 additional victory points if I'm virtuous. Okay, all right, that makes sense. Yeah. So as long as I'm not, dishonored, I will be gaining points. And then the second one is behind enemy lines. Yeah, I was going to do engage in all fronts, but I'm more shooty this time. So I have some armigers that are kind of speedy. They might just try and run in and be chaotic. I thought that might be easier to do this game. I don't know. We'll see. And then assassination. Genestealer cults are a very character-heavy army. So I feel like that was just kind of a natural choice. So yeah. Okay, so my setup is relatively straightforward, and I'm basically trying to learn from the last game where I just kind of evenly spaced it, because usually with like Space Marines or kind of whatever you model armies, you can kind of space them out a little evenly and do okay, but this time with such few models, or last time, it did not work out for me. So I tried to kind of commit a little more one-sidedly, perhaps. And so I put my Preceptor up at the very front and my Knight Crusader up as well, to really kind of try and dominate one side, while having my Castellan in the back to give as much range support as possible. And I'm hoping that that'll kind of do the trick. And then I have my Armiger Helverins, or Warglaive, sorry, down, one in the middle to kind of help hold objective, because obviously I still need to hold objective somehow. And then 2 that I'm hoping will kind of sweep around the bottom, and get into his deployment zone, or at the very least kill some stuff before they die. So yeah, that was kind of my idea. Firing base, and then kind of dominating side of the table.
Well, for me it's a bit different. So I have very little cover, so the Genestealer cults can choose to deploy via these markers, and so it actually is strategically useful because it can help me save myself from getting sniped in line of sight. So I placed the most important stuff, the HQs. I started first with a Biophage, but then like my opponent let me redo it with the Nexos, because I don't know what I was thinking. So the Nexos went up first on the objective, the Magos followed, the Familiar doesn't matter. And then I tried to avoid line of sight from their heavy hitters. And then Goliath Rockgrinder went out, and then the rest, the Biophages moved in position of one of the objectives. And then the rest were, I had to reorganize where I put my units so I could remember like what was happening, who was with who. And so I put out the rest as these markers of where they're assembled. So basically how it would happen is if I go first at the end of start of my command phase, I put everyone out. If my opponent goes first, at the end of his movement phase, my models are put out. So I could probably avoid some early turn shooting if I can just finagle them just right. They have to be placed within 1 inch of each of the markers. So I could probably avoid some line of sight shooting and stuff like that if necessary. But, well, we'll see. And, well, we're going to see how this goes. Alright, so who goes first or second? I think if I go first... if I go first, I'm going to get... if I go second, I might going to lose some units and get some damage. For first. If I go first, I'll be able to better protect myself initially, and then, yeah, I move into better cover. That's essentially what will happen. And, yeah, I believe I'll be able to do some good work that way, but if I go second, I'm going to have some trouble. So we'll see how this game goes. So if I want to go first. I need to go first.
Want to go first?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I can't remember how you're uncover. It happens in the first turn anyway by default, right? Or
yeah.
Your first turn.
The units are placed at like the beginning of my command phase if I go first.
So if I were to go, they wouldn't be showing.
No, if you go first, you will move up, have no idea what these units are, and their exact positions are not placed, and then I would place my guys out. So basically, if there's no line of sight here, I would move this guy. He's still touching this, but he'll be went up here. But if you're down over here, I'm going to be shuffling and having my guys placed out over here so you have less line of sight to guys. That is the strategic value of this. It can kind of screw you over for the first turn. I know whichever all these units are, it's a kind of a mental feat.
Yeah, because you have to like write them down or something, right?
Or, you know what, the game actually doesn't say you have to write them down. You just have to place a marker for each one. It doesn't say you specify it, but I'm going to assume that you have to.
That's in there somewhere. I feel like that's.
I never saw it.
I don't know.
So what do you think?
Well, obviously, first turn, it would give me some movement options, but being a shooty Imperial Knight, or at least more shooty focused, it would not, I think, ultimately be best for me. So I think going second is the better call here, because there's basically nothing on the table for me to shoot at. So I would just move a couple inches here, a couple inches there, and then that's about it. So yeah, I think going second for me is the go.
All right. Well, we'll see how that goes. All right.
Well,
fate of the game.
Yeah. Well, that's unfortunate.
That is. None of us got what we wanted. All right. Knights turn 1.
All right, you guys. So for movement, well, command phase, nothing happened. No one was in range of my preceptor and my crusader for their bondsman abilities. So I just went straight into movement. Basically, I moved my preceptor and crusader up as far as they would go, because their movement is a little slower. Also, where they were at, even though I moved them their full range, it honestly doesn't look like it, which is whatever. But anyway, then my warglaves, the middle one, I moved on to the middle objective. I don't know if that's a good idea, but it's, you know, he's not a titanic unit, so he can hide behind that cover at least. And then the other two, I just kind of grouped them. They didn't go their full. I think they're still short like 3 inches. But just because there's a lot of units over there, I didn't want to get them too close and then potentially get swarmed by whatever, even though that might still happen anyway. So yeah, so that was kind of the idea there. And just kind of move up, but not quite close enough that it could come back on me, hopefully. So yeah. Oh, and then my Castellan moved a little farther up as well. Alright, you guys, so basically for shooting, nothing was in range except his Goliath rock grinder towards the bottom. And the only thing that could see was my Knight Preceptor with just 2 of his guns, and he did nothing. So
yeah, I saved them all, surprisingly. This is why that 3-up armor saved.
Them all. Only 1 went through.
Yeah, but still saved them all. And an explanation, since we had no like scheduled way of the show for showing it, all the units that came in. So there was a giant unit of Gene Stealers that was supposed to go in front with them. They came from below, which they would have gotten a free 9-inch movement, and then I could move, run, and charge. So I could have gotten this massive first turn charge, but I did not get the first turn. So I could alternatively put them in reserve. So the Gene Stealers went back. After that, a Goliath truck is next to the bottom objective in red. Another green Goliath truck is next to it. And above that is a blue Goliath truck. The Patriarch is right next there to it. And a Goliath rock grinder is my topmost truck. And essentially, because of the ambush tokens, I was able to finagle my trucks to be just at the right spots, that they're out of line of sight, being called out of things so that they can't be seen for the first turn. So that's the upside of using the ambush markers.
Alright, you guys, so for this turn, I was able to place one of the explosives. I actually forgot about it. I didn't realize his territory was that far up. So we just kind of let it go. But so I placed an explosive there. And then honor of the house. So I have 2 points. And then because I am honored, at the end of the battle. Never mind. Okay, so yeah, so I have 2 points for honor the house, and that's basically it. So again, the reason why I wanted to go second, he wanted to go first, is because we knew it would be a super boring first round. But here we go. So.
Alright, so for movement phase, I very carefully and cautiously, at first I was like, I'm going to carefully and cautiously move, and then I realized that, crap, I might as well go all in, sort of. So essentially the trucks moved forward, ran, the Gene Stealer cults, the Gene Stealer's Pure Strain were each in the Goliath Rock Grinders to make them survive, so they got out, they're 3 inches, then moved and ran, and because I'm Twisted Helix, I have +1 to move, so they got really, really close to the enemy. Then the Goliath Rock Grinders moved as well. My Biophagus and Nexus started doing their raised banners on the objectives, as well as I forgot to mention the Nexus placed a marker light on the Armiger Warglaive up top. Well, not a marker light. Was it a crossfire marker? He gets to do a one for free. And there's a bunch of back and forth on my home objective on what I should or shouldn't do. But eventually, I retreated the Goliath Rock Grinder to behind the objective with their 13-inch movement because of Twisted Helix, and tried to move the Nexus Magnus in a place where they won't be shot up in the next turn. So we'll see how that goes. And then, all my vehicles moved up. My Patriarch moved up. I have a problem with my Patriarch. I can't really find a place to put him. I legit can't on the battlefield. So right now I'm deciding what to do. And actually I think I know what I'm going to do. And then the Acolytes are going to... I don't show this on camera, but the Acolytes, the ones that I get to deep strike on my first turn, appeared. They're towards the bottom right. You'll see them in the next vid, but I forgot to place them up. And you know what? Actually, I know what I'm going to do. My Patriarch, I'm going to use a 1 CP strat to remove him from the battlefield. I just got nothing on him. Alright, so for the Psychic phase, I used my Magus because my Patriarch, I took him off the board. And so essentially what happened is I targeted the Gene Stealers up the top that's near their Armigers for Might from Beyond, which failed. So I spent her Psychic Familiar to be able to re-roll that. And I got a 6 on the dot. Barely. And of course, she has no line of sight to the Gene Stealers, and she does not have range for them. But there's a 1 CP strat that can be used. I did not get it refunded by the Nexus, which would allow me to target anywhere on the board, even if I have no line of sight or range. So now I'm down to 3 CP. Alright, shooting phase was a little disappointing, but here's basically what happened. So my Acolytes went first, and they mag dumped the Armiger Warglaive right in front of them with 51 flamer shots, but because it wasn't counted as exposed, I needed 6s to wound, and I only did 3 wounds to it. Then shooting went on. My green truck fired at the front because they ran. I couldn't really do anything except the inside. They had combat shotguns, so I had 10 shots. Did a little bit of something. Then I had the red truck fire his autocannon at the Knight Preceptor at the bottom. Did absolutely nothing. And the heavy seismic guys on the inside fired at the Armiger Warglaive because they're within 24 inches and managed to do a wound, doing 2 wounds. Then over to the side, the Goliath Rock Grinder fired his Clearance Incinerator, did nothing. Then the Goliath truck in the back fired into the Armiger Warglaive, did nothing. The Goliath trucks, people on the inside with their seismic cannons fired, did nothing. And and so the Goliath Rock Grinder at the very end fired his heavy stubber at the back Armiger Warglaive and did absolutely nothing. So very uneventful shooting. Alright, so for charges, this game can be a little finicky. So Pure Strain Gene Stealers charged the Armiger Warglaive in the center. Then the Acolyte Hybrids charged the Armiger Warglaive and made it on an 8 exactly. Just barely making it. Then Pure Strain Gene Stealers up top made it in. Then whatchamacallit? The Goliath Rock Grinder up top. I measured for 8 inches. It made it 8 inches exactly. I rolled 8 inches. It made it to 8 inches, but then like the last half an inch we can't measure because the game is somehow not letting us. So we're just gonna let it go in. some of these models have some issues with their hitboxes and stuff on showing the exact distances and measurements, so some issues there. And yeah, that's all the charges. Alright, so for the fight phase, I basically just barely crawled over the finish line in this. So first thing I did was use a stratagem. Is where an enemy that has a crossfire marker, I can force them to fight last. So I forced the armorer at the very top that's next to my rock grinder to force to go last. I could not, the Nexus did not refund it for me. Then, so I had first my Pure Strain Gene Stealers, the green ones up top, swing first, and they swung all on one armorer. So for this, I can't really spread my attacks. I have to go all in. And so with Might from Beyond, they had a total of 25 attacks, and they managed to do like 4 wounds. They brought it down to 6 wounds, so that was pretty good. And then my opponent interrupted for 2 CP, and he then had the Armorer Warglaive in the middle swing all his attacks on the Pure Strain Gene Stealers and killed one of them because they have 4 up invulnerable saves. Then I had my entire unit of Acolytes. No, not Acolytes. So I moved them in first because I was like impatient, but then I realized that was the wrong thing to do, so I moved them in. It would make no difference in the end. And so the Pure Strain Gene Stealers surrounding him swung first, and they did a good amount of wounds to him. I don't remember which one, but it was a good amount. And then the Acolytes swung, and they managed to kill it in one go. It just barely, because they have AP -2, they were able to do a good amount of damage. And because Twisted Helix, I'm strength 5, hitting on it helped a little bit. That's only going to help really against the bigger guys, but I'll mention that here. And my opponent went to use his reroll to stop it, so it's very important that he dies here, because if I can, they'll be able to survive. And so my opponent did his reroll and failed to save the guy, so the Armorer died and didn't explode. I then used a stratagem for them, Gene Stealer cult. I don't know the name, sorry, but I have them. It's Into the Shadows. It's like there's 3 stratagems that say shadows something, but basically I can do that. It's what I do with my Patriarch, but I can also do it in the fighting phase. My Nexus did not refund me. It's after they make all their attacks, but before they consolidate, as long as they're more than 6 inches away from an enemy, they can go back into reserve. Now they won't be able to deep strike, but they are in reserve now, so they'll be coming in from the corners. And yeah, and then my Gene Stealers consolidated northwards, and then my Goliath Rock Grinder swung and managed to just do exactly the amount of wounds needed to kill that Armorer. And so the Rock Grinder killed the Armorer, and then we didn't show it on camera because we were hasty, and then the Armorer Warglaive, he had killed 2 of my Gene Stealers in the green squad. So overall, 2 Armorers for 3 Gene Stealers. That's a very good trade. Alright, so for Brood Swarm, I have more models on the table. I have more in my deployment zone, and I have more in the midfield. He has 3, I have more than 3. So I'm at 3 right there. If I had at least 2 models in his deployment zone, I'd have 5 points from there. Bring it down. I brought down 2 Armorers. So that's 4 points. That's less than I thought. And I have 2 Raise the Banners on the way. Overall, that was an incredible fight phase. It was just barely. I just barely made it by 1 wound each. Killing each of those Armorers was a big, big deal for swinging in my favor. However, my opponent is probably going to wipe out half my army in the next turn with shooting. So we'll see. We'll see how things go.
All right, you guys. So essentially, what I have done is I have moved. So my Knight Castellan up at the top, he moved his 8 inches down towards the bottom, just to give him kind of uninhibited lines of sight to basically his army, at least what's on the table. And then my Preceptor and Crusader up at the top, same thing, they poked out and around, so now all of his vehicles are in line of sight, and that's why I didn't have the Preceptor run. I could have had him run, but I want him to actually be able to shoot as he's moving forward and eventually maybe fight something. But really, shooting is the name of the game here, just because he can do a lot of chip damage. And so I only have so many wounds, you know. But anyway, yeah, so I basically moved out to get better lines of sight. The Armorer, I actually had stay in combat, because he can shoot in combat without really any issue. So I figured I'd do that. So yeah. Alright, you guys. So I started with my Armiger Warglaive shooting at the Gene Stealers. He killed...
1.
Yep. Yeah, that's it. No, he killed 2, didn't he?
No, 1 this turn. 2 in the last round.
Okay. Alright, so he killed 1 of the Gene Stealers up at the top. Then my Knight Preceptor shot. He shot at the Goliath truck that was in the middle of the field.
The green one.
He took it down to 1 wound, I believe.
Yes, he would have killed it, but the Goliath trucks have -1 damage reduction, so he survived. He took 9 wounds and survived to that. Otherwise, he would have taken 12. So my truck was standing.
Yeah. Quite lucky on his part. Then my Knight Crusader shot. He did a little bit of a split fire. He shot his Avenger Gatling cannon at the Pierce Train Gene Stealers just running around in the middle of the table. Unfortunately, he did literally nothing. He killed 1 of them.
Yeah.
But that's stupid with 12 shots. He just rolled garbage. And then he used his thermal cannon on the red truck that's still there. He did 4 wounds, I think.
Yeah, he did 4 wounds in total. It was
Yeah.
5, but damage reduction, so brought it down to 6 wounds left.
Yeah, and then I realized that his Iron Storm missile pod could shoot people he didn't have to see. So I aimed at his Nexos, but then he rolled absolute garbage, which is the theme of my shooting today.
Well, that's what he gets for not telling me about that. That could have been... I didn't know he could
Fair,
shoot
there's
that
a lot
line
of things he didn't tell me about either, but anyway. We're moving on. All right, so then he shot Call's Wrath at the
Knight
Goliath
Castellan up
truck.
top, the Warlord.
Yes,
yeah.
the Knight Castellan. Shot at the yellow Goliath truck with Call's Wrath. He did
8
again.
wounds.
He would have done 12 damage. Ended up doing 8 damage. And then his twin Siegebreaker cannon shot at the Goliath
Green.
truck in the middle of the board.
Green
finishing
truck.
it off. It had 1 wound left.
And so what I did was I used the stratagem that I almost never use: emergency disembarkation. And then my Nexus allowed me to refund it. And so basically the reason is because I didn't have the center objective, but this would allow me to move 6 inches. So the guys basically got to run onto the main objective. And then they roll, the downside is I have to roll 1s and 2s, they die. And so I lost 4 guys due to that. I rolled no 1s, I only rolled 2s. But I now have the center objective. Yeah.
So, then he shot his twin melted gun into the Pierce Train Gene Stealers somewhere in front of him.
And killed
Only
1.
And then he shot his Volcano Lance at the red Goliath truck. Rolled 2 hits, both hit, and then rolled double 1s.
Mm-hmm.
I had used my reroll, my command point reroll, and his ability reroll. So then I used the Saturation Bombardment, House Volker Stratagem, which let one additional of his hits have gone through, and then I rolled a 1 on that wound roll. So just a lot of disappointment, because that would have easily melted through that Goliath truck. Because it's beginning 8 damage.
Yeah.
So that was ridiculous.
I got lucky.
Yeah. So that was my shooting phase. I didn't use any of his shield breaker missiles, but maybe those will come into play next round. Yeah, so all in all, a terrible shooting phase, which is unfortunate because that was supposed to be the thing that they did, was shooting. Anyway. So I had 3 wounds go through on him. He saved all 3 of them, and then he did 2 wounds back to me.
Yep.
So a terrible fight phase. So essentially, actually this is battle round 2, so I had primaries as well. Well, I only had 2. What is it? Yeah. Okay. So I had 8 points for primaries, and then that was it. Honor of the Heroes I had from the last battle round, so I didn't get behind enemy lines, and I didn't kill any characters, so pretty uneventful turn all around, which was unfortunate.
Alright, movement was a bit of a mess. So, I retreated I moved the red Gene Stealer straight onto his main objective. I then retreated my green Gene Stealers from the Armiger. I moved my Goliath Rock Grinder an inch above it. Then the red Goliath truck moved up to the center. The blue truck moved up to get range of enemies. My yellow Goliath Rock Grinder truck at the bottom moved up to try to block and intercept, protect the Nexus, basically. And then, for an incredibly long, agonizing time, I tried to figure out where to put all my reinforcements. So I had 4 big units to come in. Well, 3 were big. Aberrants, Pure Strain Gene Stealers, my Neophyte Hybrids, and my Acolytes. So my Acolytes no longer could deep strike, they had to come in reserve. So 9 inches from the enemy, 6 inches along the board edge. Then my Patriarch could also come in. And then my Pure Strain Gene Stealers, in the end, I placed my Pure Strain Gene Stealers next to my Patriarch to intercept. I then had my giant unit of Neophytes go on the my opponent's main objective, holding the Knight Castellan, and the Aberrant unit also showed up there to deal with the Knight Castellan. So you will see how that goes, and it took me a long time to decide. This is the one thing, is like, this is a huge part of the Gene Stealer cult's strategy, and it takes a while. Alright, for the Psychic phase, I screwed up a bit after I made my first cast. So the Magus casted Might from Beyond on the Aberrant unit, and it went off successfully, and then I had to spend 1 CP, but the Nexus refunded it for her to be able to cast it to a target where she had no line of sight or was nowhere near. And then my Patriarch got to cast spells. I mean, I wanted the Magus to actually give Psychic Stimulus to the green Pure Strain Gene Stealers, but I forgot that after I selected the Aberrants for the target, because I can only use that ability once without range and distance. So the Patriarch fired his ability, Psionic Blast, at the Knight Crusader. It failed. I sacrificed his Familiar to be able to re-roll it, and he made it just barely. He needed a 5, and he did D3 mortal wounds. Then he did his ability Mental Onslaught, and that failed. So, terrible psychic phase. We'll see. Alright, so for the shooting phase. So first off, what did I do? My Goliath Rock Grinder up top fired his Clearance Incinerator at the armature that was there. Didn't do anything. Then the blue truck mag dumped it with all the crew inside with their seismic cannons, flamers, shotguns, and then the vehicle itself, and did a bunch of wounds. And then the crew on the inside of the red truck fired all their shots and killed the Armiger. But then the Armiger exploded, killing off the green squad of Gene Stealers, killing off the Rock Grinder up top, dealing 3 wounds to the Goliath truck that was red, and dealing 1 wound to the Goliath Rock truck that's blue. Then the Goliath Rock truck fired at the Knight Castellan, hit it with its autocannon. It now has ballistic skill 6, and which placed a crossfire marker on the Knight Castellan. Then, it's dying there. And then my Acolyte Hybrids at the bottom fired everything they had at the Knight Preceptor. Did like a wound to it. It was really terrible. The Goliath Rock Grinder fired, as well as to the Knight Preceptor, missed like everything, didn't hurt it at all. And then the Neophyte Hybrids, the gigantic unit of troops, used. So I thought I had to spend 2 CP. I only had to spend 1, and basically it was like a raking fire or no coordinated assault. It was basically 6s to hit, auto wound. And it was at the moment I found out he had a 2-up armor save, and I basically did almost nothing. I did 5 wounds from the Knight Castellan. That was supposed to be my big, heavy hitting punch. And they didn't. And also it was because I placed them in the wrong spot. If I would have placed them to the right of the Castellan, they would have gotten exposed, but I did not. I just completely forgot about that. And so that was my shooting phase. It wasn't as good as I thought it was. Alright, so for charges. So I started with the most, I guess, cautious. I'm trying to protect my warlord. So the Pure Strain Gene Stealers charged in first, and they failed. And I spent my only re-roll. The Nexus did not refund it to me. Or no, wait, I think it did. I have to recall. And then my Gene Stealers successfully made it in on a 10. They needed a 9-inch charge, and the Knight Crusader overwatched them, successfully killed 2 of them with his flamer and all his guns. I saved like 3 of them. And then the Patriarch charged in, and he made it as well, successful from 9 inches. And then the Acolytes, it was their turn, and they made it on a 12. Really lucky, got that Knight Preceptor. Then, up top, the Aberrants. They have 3d6 and remove 1 dice of your choice because of their ability I gave them, which was a trap is sprung, and they successfully made it into the Knight Castellan from 8 inches. And then the Pure Strain Gene Stealers, the last tiny squad, the red squad, charged in, made it in on a 5. The big squad of Neophytes cannot charge because that's part of the thing about them deep striking at 3 inches, they cannot charge. So yeah, that was a very lucky charge phase that I got in all these charges. To the fight phase. So my opponent did not have any points to interrupt, but I didn't notice that, and I went to make sure his Knight Castellan fought last. I don't remember the stratagem, but basically if they have a crossfire marker, I can force them to fight last, and my Nexus covered that. So a bunch of pointlessness. I didn't notice my opponent didn't have any command points. So then what happened was I started off with the Patriarch because he has always fight first. And he had exploding 6s and reroll to wounds, and 6s to wound turned into AP minus 6 damage 3. He did none of that except for 1 6 onto wound, and so basically he was able to do like 5 wounds or something to the Knight Crusader. And okay, then the Pure Strain Gene Stealer swung on him and brought him down to 6 wounds. They did 9 to him. Very great. Then the Acolytes swung, and they did what they could. Just he has such a high toughness. They're hitting at strength 5 because of Twisted Helix, and so they brought him down to 21 wounds, so just barely anything. Then up top, Knight Castellan was hit by the Aberrants, and since they have Might from Beyond, they have 1 extra attack each, so with 16 attacks, they swung, but he has a 2-up armor save apparently, and he saved quite a lot, so these were all damage 3 attacks. Ridiculous, and it was completely fine. I did just 6 damage to him. I did 9 damage to him, I think. One of those. Then the Pure Strain Gene Stealer swung, and they did like 2 wounds. And so the Knight Castellan, his Warlords at 16, and then he swung back on the Gene Stealers, and the Gene Stealers saved every single wound. And then at the bottom, the Knight Crusader swung on the Pure Strain Gene Stealers, despite having weapon skill 6, killed 1 Gene Stealer. And then his Knight Preceptor on the very bottom swung against the Acolytes, and he would have killed 4, but because I'm Twisted Helix, my entire army, including the vehicles, has Transhuman on a 1 and 2. So only 2 wounds went through, but those guys died. And that was the fight phase. Alright, so for points, I controlled 1, controlled 2, controlled more because I had my guys do emergency debarkation and get onto the point, so by my command phase I had it. Then I had Brood Swarm. I got 5 points. I have more models than him in every single position in the game. And so I got the full 5. To bring it down, I killed another Armiger, that's 2 points. Raise the banners high, I've collected 2 of my banners I had at the beginning of my command phase. And yeah, so far doing very well. I haven't really done anything on the mission secondary, or the mission zone secondary, and so far I'm feeling pretty positive. I mean, he can still do something. He can kill a lot of my guys, but yeah. And also, we didn't show up, but there was a morale phase, and where my Acolytes were fine because apparently he makes my guys -2 leadership. And he got my Gene Stealers to run. A total of 4 Gene Stealers died due to morale. So that sucked.
Alright guys, so basically my Knight Crusader left combat and just basically moved backwards. So that way he just got out, but he can still shoot. So that way he can't do any melee damage to me this turn. But I can at least shoot him a whole bunch of times in the face and hope for the best. As did my Knight Castellan. He left combat, stepped right on over.
Coward.
And stuff.
And apparently all his knights healed, and so his Knight Crusader, who was in red, has now gotten to yellow. So that sucks.
Yeah. Because Questor Mechanicus. Alright, you guys. So my Knight Preceptor shot up the Acolyte Hybrids. He was able to kill off, I don't know, like 6 of them maybe. That sounds about right. So he killed about 6 of them. Then I went over to my Knight Crusader, who put 3 out of his 5 guns into the Gene Stealers, because optimistically I was hoping that would have killed them so he could aim at the Patriarch. It did not. I only killed 2 out of the 4 Gene Stealers left, so he wasn't able to shoot at the Patriarch. And then the Knight Castellan shot the Void Lance at one of his trucks and destroyed it, or the Volcano Lance. Then he shot his Call's Wrath at the other one. And he did like 4 damage maybe. Oh no, you saved both of them with double 6s.
Because he shot through the grate, which
then
created light cover for it, and so it gave him basically a 2-up armor save, and I needed 6s, and I made them both.
And then his twin Meltagun and twin Siegebreaker cannon shot at the Aberrant. He did nothing. So that was not great. So that was my shooting phase. Alright guys, so Knight Preceptor swung 8 attacks, killed 4.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that squad's pretty much gone.
Yeah, you needed what, 3s and 2s and 8?
Yeah.
Only killed 4.
We decided to call it there because it's getting too ridiculous for my opponent to come back from, and I'm going to be getting 5 points every turn till the end. Well, with Brood Swarm until 15, so it's like I got it. And yeah, so for LVP, MVP. For my LVP, I'm going to have to give my LVP to my Neophyte Hybrids, the giant squad that came in. They had 5-up Feel No Pains, they had all the best guns, they deep strike 3 inches, and then they just whiffed so hard. I mean, they were against toughness 8, but they just barely did anything at all. So that was disappointing. So much was put on them, and they just flopped. And MVP, there's a lot to say for the MVPs. Like the Patriarch did good. We did a Theory Hammer, and the Patriarch would have killed that last vehicle at the very end. The red, what are you? Knight Crusader, yeah, would have done the 7 wounds easy. But the one that's most important, I guess you can say, is the Goliath truck and the squads inside. It really kept them alive. The Goliath trucks took a giant chunk of firepower and just barely survived much longer, and they successfully protected the neophytes within. Really useful. So this combo of the Goliath trucks protecting these neophytes, really strong combo, makes these guys very tough and durable. And the firepower they bring in from these open top vehicles is very, very good. And so that's my LVP, MVP. So what did you got?
Well, MVP, I think, is my Knight Castellan. He's the one that, in general, did the most damage. He also had the strongest gun, so it was easier for him to do that. And then my LVPs were the Warglaves. They kind of just died. I probably didn't use them super well. I don't know. It's hard to say because they only moved once, and then that was it. But yeah, so MVP is the Castellan. There is stuff with him that I probably didn't use, like I forgot about his Warlord trait, and I think there's a couple stratagems that help Mechanicus guys and Castellans. But yeah, so yeah, kind of disappointing. I don't know. I feel like the list was okay, but I think I just got to figure out how to use it right. It's kind of hard to gauge.
Yeah, so for me, how I
handle all these things better.
Yeah, so for me, what I ultimately thought and saw was... so because it's a game of objectives, I knew you couldn't bring that many of the big, very powerful hitters. So what I was trying to think of is if I can wipe out the armatures, I would have almost won the game, because then I would have eliminated your ability to be everywhere and be on all the objectives, and I can just occupy and swarm the big guys. So the armatures were straight up my main target, and if I could wipe them out, because they are much weaker than the Knight Castellans. I mean, they're toughness 7, but they only have 12 wounds, 3-up armor saves, so I focused on them and did my best to hit them as best I could. And so that was my main target. And once I had that, it was just a matter of stalling you guys and just stalling for time. and just outplaying you, outmaneuvering you as best as
Well,
I
the hard
could.
part was even the damage output of the 3 big guys left is still a lot, but I had quite a few really just crappy rolls.
Yeah,
Which
that's the one thing about this game. It actually probably would have gone to much closer, but I just had incredible luck. Killing that armager in the
really
middle
bad luck.
with 1 wound left, and you failed to reroll.
Well, both of them, the one and then the one on the bottom, you both did exactly the amount of wounds needed.
Yeah, so like to be fair, like a pivotal part of this game was just dumb luck. I just barely made it, and when you had your super shooting phase, it didn't amount to much.
Right, because the rolls were, I don't know.
Well, the Goliath trucks endured a lot. Like, so the fact that one Goliath truck
The -1 damage definitely kept 2 of them alive.
long enough to absorb more shooting, so you had to focus more onto them. Like, you had to spend like one or 2 giant guns to kill a 1 wound Goliath truck. So very useful.
That was kind of
and my aberrants actually did pretty good. They came in and started just beating you.
Yeah, I guess the other thing is I didn't even get a chance to use the Preceptor's chaplain ability things.
I mean, you did actually do a lot of damage.
Huh?
You did a lot of damage to my Gene Stealers. You killed 4 of them by morale because of that -2 aura.
Yeah, so that was good, but the 4-up invuln, like, you rolled a lot of those 4-up invulns,
Yeah.
and that was super annoying.
Yeah, I have to say that, though, tactically, it should have been much closer, back and forth, but this was a very lucky game in my favor. I just got really lucky. A lot of rolls went to my favor.
I wonder, maybe the first round or 2, like, full battle rounds, just sit maybe all the way back with them, and then after maybe in the 3rd battle round start looking at objectives or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
as many wounds as they have, at the same time they don't, and then as good as they seem like they are, they're not.
Yeah.
If there's more of them, then yeah, it would be crazy. But I think with just the one, I don't know. So I think they just need more just committed focus time.
Yeah, because for me, it was like the first 2 turns was incredibly difficult and dangerous. I had to really rush as fast as I could to get in the right spots, because you made the worst battlefield possible. There was no cover. I was going to die. Literally, I had to...
That was the goal.
Yeah, the guile I had to use to just barely survive the first 2 turns, and then... Yeah, these Gene Stealers are superior, absolutely superior to anything the Tyranid Codex has. And I think that I played as best as I possibly could, and even beyond, I was lucky. So, honestly, I should have had way more casualties. Probably lost the Patriarch, maybe. The Gene Stealers should have died out. I should have only had 1 truck left of the Goliaths. This Neophytes, if they did their job... probably by bad luck. So overall, it was a very fun game. I've been looking forward to this for a while. I played the Gene Stealer Colts to the absolute best of my ability. Oh, kind of. I screwed up a few things. But yeah, and your Knights did lots of damage.
It's better than the last game, but I think they're an army that needs a little more focus or familiarity, probably.
But against me...
Because I don't even know if I used a single stratagem.
Yeah, but against me, I don't really think that be able to defeat me so easily. Well, because my army essentially countered a lot of stuff. If you wanted to stay back and shoot, I was going to have like 5 or 6 units just show up deep striking right next to you. So, I mean, come on.
But even that, I don't know, just the deep strike units alone wouldn't have been that big of a deal, especially if most of my army was actually kind of stuck in the back. It would have created just a very specific few spots it could have come in.
Like this unit, this big unit, all have 5-up feel no pains. I feel like that would have mattered.
Yeah.
Alright then, well, GG's. Next week, we'll be doing Mechanicus. And, yeah. Alright, and then, I'll see you all soon.